Hello students, I'm Professor Seeger, an English instructor from USCA Aiken. In this video lecture, I will be going over a couple ways that paying attention to transitions in your papers can help improve your writing in terms of style, clarity, and even content. In this lecture, I will also go over various strategies to help you strengthen transitions in any paper. This, in turn, will help you write stronger papers and receive better grades. At this point in the lecture, please remove yourself from all distractions. Make sure you have a pen and a pad of paper to take notes during the presentation. If I go too quickly, please feel free to stop and rewind as often as you need. Transitions help readers move from thought to thought, from sentence to sentence, paragraph to paragraph. They show us all the connections between ideas and concepts. Transitional words or phrases show how one idea, event, or thing is connected to another idea, event, or thing. They show the relationship between the two. Think of transitions as a bridge between two thoughts. Bridges connect two pieces of land. So too do transitions connect two thoughts. Also consider the fact that some bridges are longer than others. Some might extend a couple feet and others might span miles. Now, none of your transitions should be miles long, but keep in mind that some will be more extensive than others, depending on the relationship between the two things you're discussing. Now understand there are several different types of relationships sentences can have, just like people. And just like with people, there are several words and phrases that identify that relationship. Over the next two slides, there are a series of relationships sentences might have with one another. Note, not every sentence will need a transitional phrase, but if the relationship between them is unclear, you will want to include one. The first relationship is cause and effect, which is identified by words such as accordingly, as a result, because, consequently, hence, so, then, therefore, thus. Keep in mind that there may be multiple correct words for some transitions, like in this example, I eat cheese, blank, I smell like cheese. You might choose consequently, hence, or therefore. Second relationship, to show comparisons, using words such as also, in the same way, likewise, like, similarly. And here's the example. My brother is an all-star quarterback, blank, I am good at baseball. Again, you'll notice that there are several possible answers from the list above. In this case, the one you pick is a stylistic choice depending on your personal voice and the audience. Third relationship, to show contrasts and exceptions. Although, but, even though, however, in contrast, instead, nevertheless, nonetheless, on the contrary, on the one hand, on the other hand, still, yet. And here's the example. I hate potatoes, blank. I love French fries. Again, we might use several of these phrases successfully, but also keep in mind that there are some that flat out don't work, and some sound just wrong for the situation. Saying, I hate potatoes, yet in contrast I love French fries, may be technically correct, but if you speak that way to your friends or anybody, they might think you're a little strange. Third, to show examples. Even, for example, for instance, indeed, in fact, of course. And here's the example. I am clumsy, blank. Today I fell 3 times. Fourth, to show time. After, as soon as, at first, at the same time, eventually, meanwhile, later, simultaneously, so far, soon, thereafter. I ate a burger, blank. I drank a milkshake. And you'll notice here that the transitional phrase we choose very much defines that relationship. Using later is much different than simultaneously. Fifth, to signal a summary or conclusion. As a result, as we have seen, in other words, or therefore. Notice that I didn't include the phrase in conclusion. Most English teachers consider this lazy writing. Typically, a transition into a conclusion should be obvious by tone and thematic shift. but if you feel you need a phrase, please don't use in conclusion. Using transitional words and phrases is one way to show connection. Another way is to combine sentences. Consider the passage below. My father is over 70 years old. He was born in East Germany. His accent makes him hard to understand. He will talk and talk no matter if we understand him or not. He breeds and trains hunting dogs. He reeks of dogs. His favorite color is green. If you had to characterize the type of writing here, you might say it reads like a children's book for a 5-year-old, not something you want in a college-level paper. Here's the revision. My father, born in East Germany, is over 70 years old. Although his accent makes him hard to understand, he will still talk and talk. Usually he will talk about the hunting dogs he breeds and trains. He spends so much time with them that he often reeks of dogs. Notice in this revision that combining some parallel ideas and using transitional words makes a world of difference. You may notice that I cut out the sentence about my father's favorite color. Here is why. I found myself trying to make a transition into this sentence for about 15 minutes. Then I started thinking how important that sentence was to my paragraph. Ultimately, I decided that the information was not important to the paragraph. You might have to make similar decisions as you look to connect the sentences in a choppy paragraph. Don't be afraid to cut something if, upon second consideration, it doesn't fit. Now, let's go to vocabulary.com and try a couple other interactive examples. You will want to write down your answers here. You'll be required to give the correct answer at the end of the video. Alright, so let's go to EnglishVocabulary.com, a great place for all of your English vocabulary and grammar testing needs. And we see we have a transition exercise right here. Let's try and answer a couple, shall we? Alright, let's do it. Number 1, she got the job, blank the fact that she had very little experience. We look at the possible options. Otherwise, unless, in addition, in fact, moreover, and so on. You can read them. And to make our decision, we've got to think of a couple things. 1, what is the relationship between her getting the job and her qualifications or experience? So this is a negative connection. And I think the word we're looking for is despite. She got the job despite the fact that she had very little experience. I click in despite, and what the web page does that's really cool is we can check our work. And you see we get a little smiley face. Isn't that nice? Okay. My sister's handwriting is always so neat. Blank. Mine is a total mess. And we look at the options. And what do you think? That's right. Whereas, I think, works best. My sister's handwriting is always so neat, whereas mine is a total mess. We check our work, and smiley face. Number 3. I lost the game, but I told myself that I had improved a lot, blank. Now I want you to write down the answer that you think is best. You'll need it for later. Wink, wink. You good? All right, let's try number 4. You better wear a helmet when you go rollerblading. Blank, you could hurt yourself. And I think what we're looking for is the word otherwise. You'd better wear a helmet when you go rollerblading, otherwise you could hurt yourself. That sounds pretty good to me. Let's check our work. All right, smiley face. We're doing all right. One more. Again, I want you to write this one down. Reading is an excellent way to increase your vocabulary. Blank. It can also help you improve your grammar. That's good advice whether it's choppy or not. But here are your options. All right, I'll give you a couple seconds to write down the right answer. Remember, you can always pause this video if you need a little more time. You good? All right. I show you this exercise for a couple reasons. First, if If you want to improve your writing, it is vital to think about your choices as a writer. Second, it is a good way to test whether you are paying attention to this video. Remember, there are some questions at the end. Third, it is a good resource if you feel you could use a little practice at transitions and relationships. Transitional phrases are just the ticket for making smaller sentence-by-sentence connections. But if you are making a larger conceptual leap or switching gears, you need to more deliberately show the steps it takes to get from one point to the next. If you introduce a new argument, a new perspective, or a new example to help make your point in your paper, take the opportunity to draw the connection between your two examples. Discuss what connects them. Drawing the connections between your points is a big part of the development of your paper. You should have a reason for each example besides some version of, "Hey, this is another example." That's weak. Making stronger transitions is all a matter of asking yourself a couple basic questions, and then using your answers as the raw materials to build your bridge. Keep in mind that the questions you ask depend on the relationship between the paragraphs. If your points are building to a main point by giving different aspects of a central thesis, you ask the following questions. How do your two examples or points conceptually connect to the thesis? Why is it important to make that connection? However, if your two examples make similar points, you might ask a different set of questions. What makes these examples different? Why are both necessary for me to make my argument? Remember to let this take a couple sentences. Not only are you drawing stronger connections by answering these questions, but you are also developing your content and showing quality of thought. Sometimes these transitions require a bit of work, but they are usually worth it. However, before you do all that work, you will want to take a step back and consider the overall order of your paragraphs. Remember, since not all transitions are as difficult to make or require as much bridging, you should always consider reordering your points or paragraphs before making elaborate transitions. Now here is an example using an analysis of the television show South Park. I have a thesis at the top because we want to know the central direction and purpose of the paper to help us fill in the gaps. Here's the thesis. It is through Cartman's interaction with the other children, especially Token, that South Park confronts some of our society's deeply ingrained racial prejudices. After the thesis, I have two different examples that make important points in the paper. However, right now their connection is very weak. The first example. In the episode The Quest for Ratings, Cartman, as the elementary school news anchor, takes Token aside after a show and asks him to talk more white. This scene presents the societal misconception that education and race are inherently entwined. And the second example. In the episode Here Comes the Neighborhood, Token is picked on by the South Park children for being richer than the rest of them. Eventually, Snoop Dogg and Oprah decide to move to South Park and are quickly rejected by the town because they are rich. So your job now is to bridge this gap for the reader so they understand the relationship between the two examples and how they each inform the thesis statement. This isn't always easy, but it is worthwhile. Here's a pointer to make it easier. Consider the individual steps it will take to make a smooth connection. Then, write a couple bullet points that you will later turn into sentences. Here is one way we can make the connection between the paragraphs. It helps if you consider the steps it takes to make a strong connection that also shows the progression of your central argument or thesis. This progression is a way of showing the reader that the ideas in the second paragraph build upon the ideas in the first one. Now that's a sophisticated transition that improves organization, clarity of purpose, and quality of thought, three of your primary writing goals for most essays. For those of you who have never watched South Park, or those of you writing literary analysis papers, here's another example. First, the thesis. The short line combined with the simple imagery of the red wheelbarrow causes the reader to attach various symbolic meanings to these images, which depend on the reader's own personal experiences. So the first step, I think, is to read the poem so we're all on the same page. Don't worry, it's short. So much depends upon a red wheelbarrow, glazed with rainwater, beside the white chickens. Here are two of my main but significantly different points. Point 1. The short lines of the poem often break words and images into syllabic components. These short couplets and extreme enjambment cause the reader to speed up their reading of the poem, emphasizing the shortness of the poem and the shortness of a profound moment or epiphany. And then my second point. Although there are only 3 simple symbols in the poem, what they actually represent is variable depending upon the reader. What tends to remain constant, however, is the relationship between the images. They are all connected, as if they are components required for something significant. And here is how we might bridge those gaps as well as build some quality content. After the first example, I brainstormed some ideas. 1. This emphasis on the syllable breaks things further down into their components. For example, the wheelbarrow, the 2 parts of the wheelbarrow. I might even turn this into a couple of sentences or even a paragraph. 2. Each image is broken into its own couplet, giving each an added significance and further separateness. 3. This significance, and the fact that this is a poem and must mean something deep, leads readers to interpret these images as symbols. Then I have a new paragraph. Although these are only 3 simple symbols in the poem, what they represent is variable depending upon the reader. And hopefully, you can see in this example the process of closing the gap between my 2 ideas. And let's end on a quick review. Here are a couple of things to consider as you begin working on the transitions in your papers. 1. Do you need a transitional phrase, or do you need a stronger connection? 2. If you're considering transitions within a paragraph, try combining sentences and rearranging them more logically, starting with a topic sentence. 3. If you're considering transitions between paragraphs, are you able to rearrange your paragraphs more logically first? 4. What steps in logic or rhetoric do you need to make to draw a stronger connection between your paragraphs? Well, that's the end of my little workshop on transitions. Please stick around and answer a few questions so you can test your knowledge and also get full credit for attendance. Bye.